painting is not just art, it is a crime scene. This is the Raft of the Medusa. 150 people were abandoned on this makeshift wooden platform in the middle of the Atlantic. They were left to die because a few wealthy men didn't want to be inconvenienced. Welcome to Archived History. This is a journey into the darkest corners of human history. The year is 1816. France is in a fragile state. Napoleon has been exiled, and the Bourbon monarchy has been restored. King Louis XVIII wants to show the world that France is still a superpower. He plans a massive expedition to reclaim the colony of Senegal from the British. The fleet is led by a ship called La Méduse. It carries 400 souls, soldiers, scientists, and families looking for a new life. There was a rot at the core of this mission. The ship was commanded by Viscount Hugh Duroy de Chaumareix. Chaumareix was a Nepo baby of the 19th century. He hadn't commanded a ship in 20 years. He got the job only because of his noble blood. He was a man who knew how to dance at royal balls, but had no idea how to read the ocean's tides. Chaumareix wanted glory. To prove his superiority, he decided to outrun the other 3 ships in his convoy. He ignored his experienced officers and took advice from a passenger, a man named Richefort, who claimed to be a navigator but was actually just a philosopher with an old map. Experienced sailors saw the water changing color, a sign of shallow sandbanks. They begged the captain to slow down. He laughed. On July 2nd, 1816, the arrogance of one man met the reality of the ocean. The Medusa struck a sandbank at full speed. Panic hit. They tried to lighten the ship by throwing supplies overboard, but Chaumareix refused to throw away the 14 heavy cannons because they were symbols of French pride. That pride kept the ship stuck until the hull finally cracked. There weren't enough lifeboats. The elites, the captain, the governor, and their families took the boats. For the remaining 150 lower-class soldiers and workers, they lashed together spare masts and beams to create a raft. The moment 150 people stepped onto it, it sank 3 feet under the water. The plan was for the lifeboats to tow the raft to shore, but the raft was heavy, it was slow, and the wealthy officers in the lifeboats were getting tired. In a moment of pure cowardice, Chaumareix ordered the tow ropes to be cut. The survivors on the raft watched in horror as the lifeboats, their only hope, disappeared into the horizon. They were abandoned with no compass, no mast, and only a few wet biscuits to eat. What followed was a descent into madness. When the first night fell over the raft, the illusion of rescue died with it. The wind rose suddenly, and the sea, which had seemed calm hours earlier, began to strike the fragile platform from every direction. The raft had no railings, no balance, no protection. Waves rolled over it, flattening bodies against one another. In the darkness, men slipped between the logs or were dragged into the water before anyone could react. By morning, around 20 were dead. Their bodies lay across the planks until the living, exhausted and numb, pushed them into the sea to make space to stand. The second and third days brought heat that felt merciless. The biscuits were gone, the fresh water lost, and only wine remained. It did not hydrate them, it burned them from the inside. Arguments began over who could stand closer to the center of the raft.
I'm the captain here! I will stand at the center of the raft! You are a liar! I earned that position! Break it up! Both of you, back down now!
Fear sharpened into anger. On the third night, violence erupted. Soldiers fought with sabers, others with broken beams torn from the raft itself. When dawn came, dozens more were dead. The survivors threw the bodies overboard without ceremony. There was no room left for mourning. Hunger soon became unbearable. It hollowed out reason and dulled shame. At some point, without discussion, one man cut into a corpse. Others followed. Flesh was dried in the sun and eaten in silence. No one spoke about it, because survival had already stripped them of the identities they once carried. The sea drifted beneath them as if indifferent to what they had become. On July 13th, the ship Argus accidentally spotted them. Out of 150 people, only 15 were left. They looked like ghosts, skeletal, sunburned, and mentally broken. While these 15 were fighting for their lives, where was the captain? He was already safe on shore, enjoying a warm meal. In fact, he was so unbothered that he sent a ship back to the wreck, not to look for survivors, but to recover his personal gold and luggage he had left behind. The French government tried to hush it up, but the ship's surgeon, Savigny, survived. He wrote a report that leaked to the press. The public was outraged. The captain was court-martialed, but because of his noble status, he only got 3 years in prison. The lives of 140 people were worth just 3 years to the French state. This is where the artist Théodore Géricault enters. He was haunted by this story. He didn't just paint a picture. He conducted a forensic investigation. He interviewed the survivors. He built a 1-to-1 scale model of the raft. He even brought human limbs from the morgue into his studio to see how skin changes color after death. When the raft of the Medusa was unveiled in 1819, it was a political explosion. It didn't show a king or a general. It showed a black man at the top of a pile of bodies, waving a cloth at a distant hope. It was a giant middle finger to the corrupt government. Today it hangs in the Louvre, a silent 20-foot-high reminder of what happens when the powerful abandon the innocent. History is written by the winners, but art is the voice of the victims. If you were on that raft, would you have been one of the 15? Or would you have lost your soul on day one? Tell me your thoughts in the comments.
Subscribe Archived History for more stories about history.